combination we learned last week. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5, 6, and 7, and 8. The music reached a pounding crescendo as she pivoted and thrusted to the bass-heavy beat. We followed as best we could, Mallory having a little harder time of not stepping on her own feet. My years of ballet classes and the quick step speed that vampirism gave me were actually serving me pretty well. The humiliation of a 28-year-old vampire doing jazz hands notwithstanding. Barbie's enthusiasm aside, the fact that we were doing jazz hands in a hip-hop dance class didn't say much for her credentials. But the class was still an improvement over my usual training. My workouts were usually très intense, because only a couple of months ago I'd been named sentinel for my house. To make a long story slightly shorter, American vampires were divided into houses. Chicago had 3, and I'd been initiated into the second oldest of these, Catagun. Much to everyone's surprise, given my background, think grad school and medieval romantic literature. I'd been named Sentinel. Although I was still learning the ropes, being Sentinel meant I was supposed to act as kind of a vampire guard. Turns out that while I was a pretty geeky human, I was a pretty strong vampire. Being Sentinel also meant training, and while American vampires had traded in the black velvet and lace for Armani and iPhones, they were pretty old school on a lot of issues, feudal on a lot of issues, including weapons. Put all that together, and it meant I was learning to wield the antique katana I'd been given to defend Catagun and its vampires. Coincidentally enough, Catcher was an expert in the second of the 4 keys, weapons, so he'd been tasked with prepping me for vampire combat. As a newbie vampire, having Catcher as a sparring partner wasn't exactly great for the confidence. Aerobics Barbie whipped herself into a hip-hop frenzy, leading the class in a final multi-step combination that ended with a lot of us staring sassily at the mirrors that lined the dance studio. Session concluded, she applauded and made some announcements about future classes that Mallory and I would have to be dragged, kicking and screaming to attend. "Never again, Merritt," she said, walking to the corner of the room where she deposited her bag and water bottle before class started. I couldn't have agreed more. Although I loved to dance, hip thrusting under Barbie's bubbly instruction and ever-bouncing bosom involved too little actual dance and too much cleavage. I needed to respect my dance master. Respect wasn't exactly the emotion Barbie inspired. We sat down on the floor to prep for our return to the real world. "So, Ms. Vampire," Mallory asked me, "are you nervous about moving into the house?" I glanced around, not entirely sure how much chatting I should be doing about my vampire business. The Chicagoland vampires had announced their existence to Chicago roughly 10 months ago. And as you might guess, humans weren't thrilled to learn that we existed. Riots, panic, congressional investigations, and then Chicago's 3 houses became wrapped up in the investigation of 2 murders. Murders supposedly perpetrated by vampires from Catagun and Gray, the youngest Chicago house. The masters of those houses, Ethan Sullivan and Scott Gray, dreaded the attention. But the master of the 3rd house, that was Navarre, was conniving, manipulative, and the one that actually planned the murders. She was also drop-dead gorgeous, no pun intended. She might as well have leapt from an editorial spread in Vogue. Dark hair and blue eyes, just like me, but with an arrogance that put celebrities and cult leaders to shame. Humans were entranced, fascinated by Selena de Solenay. Her beauty, her style, and her ability to psychically manipulate those around her were an irresistible combination. Humans wanted to learn more about her, to see more, to hear more. That she'd been responsible for the deaths of 2 humans, murders she'd planned and confessed to, hadn't minimized their fascination. Nor had the fact that she'd been captured, by the way, by Ethan and me, and extradited to London for incarceration by the Greenwich Presidium, the council that ruled Western European and North American vampires. And in her